All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of cleaning up that HTML application that we had and converting it over to kind of React components. And I'll link to the last video where we developed this React underscore proj 2, which is equivalent to React underscore proj. I had this fully baked version, and then this was kind of the version that we built together. When we got to the end of that last video, we had kind of a functioning React application. And to be honest, we could stop right there. It was 100% functioning, but there were still some things that were not quite right. And I want to address those things in this video. So first, just a quick review of what we're trying to build. We have this portfolio application here that has a couple of pages. So one page is, this kind of really super long page where we can scroll through and see all of the content. And then there's these portfolio pages where we can go visit and get information about a particular project. Let's take a look at the code and where we left off. And again, React proj 2 and React proj are pretty much the same. So I'm just going to ignore proj 2. We're just going to look into this one. One of the hints that things aren't quite right is when you look at public and you look at the index.html page, there's all this script here at the very bottom, these vendor scripts that are being pulled in. And then there's this main.js file here. So if you look at main.js, this is kind of how you would write an application if you were using jQuery or just kind of native JavaScript, right? So you would kind of hook into kind of these DOM elements. You would have this main JavaScript file, and then you would handle kind of these event listeners. Most of this code should probably go into the components. And so that's kind of what we're going to do today is we're going to look at, how do I convert the rest of this application to kind of using those components. And the second thing we're going to do is take all the steps that we need to deploy this to GitHub. There's a couple of things we have to kind of modify to make this compatible with GitHub pages. And just like last time, I've already kind of pre-baked most of this, so it's going to be more of a show and tell. But the very first thing that we're going to do is I have these 3 directories. I don't need this one anymore. So we're just going to ignore this one during this application. And this is kind of where we left off. And then here's the HTML version. So the very first thing I'm going to do is in this HTML, this is the repo that we're going to use to push to GitHub. So the very first thing I did is I just did a little code organization so I could put all of the HTML and the React version in one repository. So if you look now at this HTML, and we'll rename this in a second because it doesn't really make sense, but here's the HTML version. It's in its own directory. So this was the original HTML version. And then I moved the final React version to here. So now I have the final React version in here, and this is the one we're going to actually deploy to GitHub. So for now, we're just going to rename this to code. So now we have kind of this kind of directory structure where we have a code directory, and this is our main kind of GitHub repo, and then we have the HTML version in there, and then we also have the React version. So if I change directory now into code, the React version, and I run npm start, the React version does indeed still function. Okay, so now we got our code directory here where our final code's going to lie. Let's go back and talk about React proj 2. There are some small tweaks that I did to get from React proj 2 to React proj. I just want to go over those real quick. So the first thing is there's some miscellaneous logos that were left around. So you can delete these miscellaneous logos. So logo 192, obviously that's a React logo. We can remove that. You can delete logo 512. It's a 512 version of that logo. You can delete the fave icon because we already have a fave icon. And again, the fave icon that we're using is in our assets image. It's here. So that's the fave icon that we're actually using. If you look at the index.html page and you look at the CSS that we're actually linking in here, it's under the Sassy directory here, style.css. So if we look at that, that is here, and here's the compiled version of those Sassy files. So it's all right there. That's the directory where PyCharm is compiling all this down for me, and I linked it in from there. So I no longer need this old version of that compilation. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. In fact, it's the only file in the CSS directory, so I'm going to just delete the whole directory. If I look at the original source code linked in some other CSS right here. And that CSS was mostly related to, again, the kind of the standard React app. I don't need that, so I'm going to delete this index.css file. And I'm also going to remove that import statement. And then there's one more logo here that we can remove. All right, so if I go through here, set up tests, that's fine. App. This is a test that will not pass anymore because we don't have this in our link. But I'm going to leave that there because I think it's a good stub. So if we ever want to add test in, we can add test. But for now, I'm just going to leave that. App CSS. Again, this is another CSS page that we can delete. So this is all about the app. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And if it was linked in over here, right there, I'm going to remove that. And then these are all our files. All right, so those are some just a miscellaneous cleanup that we can do of kind of files that are no longer used. If we look at our index.html file, at the very bottom, you can see all these scripts that we've imported. Most of these we'll be able to get rid of eventually. The main culprit here that we're going to start looking at is this main.js file. If I look at what is in main.js, so you can see all these JavaScript functions that are being run. So as an example, here's a couple of functions that are hooked up to kind of the scroll event. And as I scroll, they help highlight the appropriate menu item here. So as I scroll, you'll see About become highlighted, and then Resume becomes highlighted. That's currently being done from this JavaScript. And we want to be able to switch that so that JavaScript is now part of the components. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through this main.js file and start to componentize, if that's a word, all of these little functions. Let's just kind of carry on our scan here from top to bottom just so we can get an idea of what's all in here. We just talked about all this scrolling and the navbar links on the sidebar. That should probably go in the sidebar component. We'll look at that in a second. Here's a back to top button. So that's this button here, right here. So what this is doing is either hiding or showing it. So if I go all the way to the top, you can see that little button disappears. But as soon as I start to scroll, it appears. This is based upon that scroll position, and we're showing or hiding it from here. This probably should go into the component that has this button on there. I'm not sure if that's the layout or where that is, but we'll go looking for that. Here's the event handler for the mobile web. So, right now I get the sidebar. If I make this page small enough, all of a sudden I'll get this mobile icon here. And then when you click it, that shows or hides this navigational link. So that's what this is doing. Here's some navigational stuff. So if you click one of the scroll to links, so if you click, for example, Resume or About, it automatically does that scrolling. So that's what this is doing here for us. And it looks like this is related to that also, the hash links. Here's the type, the hero. So at the very top, that little JavaScript is trying to control that hero. So this probably should go in the hero component. This skills animation, this is, we're not currently using this at all, but on the original theme, there was kind of like a progress bar that had this little animation. So you can see kind of it's a progress bar animation. So I'm going to go ahead and just comment that out because I know for sure that that's not needed at all. This isotope filter, that is, if you look at the portfolio, and then there's this section here where you can kind of filter by different types. That's what this is controlling right there. That should probably go into kind of this portfolio component. This light box, we're not using a light box at all, so I can comment this out already. So this section is about the portfolio. So if I actually go to one of the portfolio pages, you see this kind of slideshow that's using this swiper element. So that's that. That should probably go into the portfolio page itself. This is controlling the testimonial slider. So if we go back to here, the testimonials, again, this is just a slider that's just kind of pushing that content to the left all the time. So that's that. So we have a lot of animation on scroll, which is using this AOS component. So if I go all the way back to the top and I kind of restart this page, And then as I scroll, you can start to see things move. So they're going to kind of come in from the left or the right, or these elements are moving up. So all of that kind of animation on scroll is controlled by this. And then here's a pure counter. Right now, this is not used at all. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. So the goal is to take each one of these little sections and move these to the component itself, eventually kind of getting all of this code kind of out of here. All right, so let's take care of this one first. We'll walk through the details of a few of these, and then after that, I'll let you kind of get through the rest on your own, and I'll just show the end results. Let's take care of this animation on scroll. And so now I'm in this React version. So let's start to make these changes to make this AOS kind of more part of as a React component. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install that library. So right now, sometimes I had to do some searching for these things, but I know that there's an AOS package, and then I can install that. So the next thing is, we have this bit of code. We have to move that someplace. And what we're going to do is take a look at our components that we have. We have these pages. Our top level page is this app, and it has this layout. I don't think we have to push it into here, but let's take a look at layout. Layout has all of the HTML components. So this is where we're going to import the AOS. We're going to actually add this in here. So I already have a use effect, and it's already kind of for some of the scroll stuff that's in here already. Now that I see this a little bit of code in here. I think I added this already before I started recording here. This is in our JavaScript file right now. So let's go find this where we have this back to top thing in our main.js. So here's this back to top. So this bit of code, I can comment this out. But if you look at this, what I did was I copied and pasted that code into this layout.js. Let's do it like this. Let's put it between some things so we can kind of look at it. And so you can kind of see that I already kind of converted this code that I just pasted here, and I put it right here. So I'm going to leave that commented out over here, and I'm going to just clean up this little mess that I just made. And because I just commented this out, I want to reload over here, and let's just make sure that the back to the top button is working. And so here's this button it shows, and when I click it, it does indeed kind of go back to the top. So this is now functioning. I can get rid of this. I no longer need that at all. So let's go through and let's look at this animation right here. So I need this. I want this to be part of the layout also. So this is kind of our top level. So I'm going to drop this in for now, and we're going to try to make this work. So right away I'm getting it underlined here, AOS. What I need to do is I need to import. I just installed this package. So what I'm going to go up here is I'm going to add an import for that package. And so now I have the package installed. And so now if I go back to my main.js, I should be able to comment this out, and I'm going to reload. And remember, this was the library that was responsible for kind of all the animation on scroll. So if I reload and I don't see any animation, it's broken. But if I am seeing it like I am now, I know that it's functioning. And while we're here, there is one more change as part of this animation on scroll. If I look at this, I no longer need that vendor. So I should be able to remove this. And at the very top, there's this aos.css. I'm going to remove that also. This probably will break things. So let's go ahead and reload it. And now it's not really doing the animation anymore. And what I have to do back over here is I have to import the CSS again. But I want it not from the vendor library. I want it from this package that I just installed. So that's an import in the CSS. And if I go back to the top, let's just refresh and see if I get my animations back. And my animations are back. So at this point, this bit of code is no longer needed, so I can delete it. In addition, I cleaned up here. So see a couple more things I'm going to clean up real quick. I don't need this pure counter. That was something that was from before. I'm not using a light box. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And we're not doing waypoints. We already said that. So just clean up all of those. All right, let's go back to our main.js. So the next thing, this is a bit of code in the testimonials. So first thing I'm going to do is I just scroll down. I'll show you where that's at again. Testimonials are down here, and that's what that page is right there. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, but I'm going to comment it out. And let's see what breaks. And so far, nothing has really broken. It doesn't appear. Seems like things are still working. Let's go to that testimonials page. So if you recall, the last time we had already imported Swiper. So we npm installed Swiper, and we actually on our installs page are using that import. So this we already converted from the last time. I'm going to leave that the way it is. It looks like it's functioning. Let's go back and look at our index. This Swiper bundle, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And let's clean up some of the styles at the top. I see Lightbox, we don't need that. And let's see if we can get rid of Swiper bundle. And we will refresh and see if this thing still works. Getting a little funkiness right here, right? And that's probably because I just deleted that CSS. Let's add the CSS back in. All right, so those are back now. Okay, so when I add this back, it does work. So it is the CSS. What I'm going to go ahead and do is break it again. I'm going to delete this line so that I know it's not working again. So it's back to not working. And at the very top level, in the layout, I'm going to actually import the CSS for this. This is at a top level because so I may use Swiper on other components. So I want to make sure that it's there all the time. So I'm going to refresh this and let's see if we can get this to function again. And now we're back to working. So I added the CSS bundle. So now we're all cleaned up with Swiper here on this page. And this main.js, I've commented it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. I no longer need that. Okay, so the next bit of code is this Swiper code. Again, it's Swiper, but it's on the portfolio details page. That's this page here. So when you click on one of the portfolio items, it'll open up another page. And that page then has a slideshow on it, which is using Swiper for that animation. That does appear to be functioning right now. So let's comment this out and see if this code's needed. So now I've got this commented out. Let me reload this page just to make sure. And it still is functioning. So I think that we're okay. If we look at this portfolio page, you know, again, we had already installed Swiper using npm, and we did the imports here for that package, and then we'd already kind of converted this. So I think that code we just commented out, and we should be good to go. The next bit of code we already commented out. This again was for the Lightbox, which I don't have any use for anymore. All right, so we're making our way back up. This is for the isotope filter. So let's go look and see where that is, and let's get that to work. So the isotope filter is on the portfolio page, and that's this bits right here. So when I click app, it's not working right now because I already have this, I've already deleted this AOS library, right? So it's saying that I can't, it's not working. So this is a good spot to kind of copy this code. We're going to comment all this out for real, and this will not work at all anymore. But let's go and put this now in the portfolio component. So here's the portfolio component. I'm going to close down some of this noise. And let's work on converting this component. So first thing is, we know that we were using some library called isotope. To get that to work, we're going to have to install a package for isotope instead of importing from just direct JavaScript. So we're going to npm install a package called isotope layout. I think I misspelt that. There we go. Should be a E, isotope layout. And then I'm also going to install I'm just going to copy and paste this so I don't misspell it. this package. And so now those packages should be installed. So if we look at the packages, I've got isotope layout and I've got this isotope layout, the types package here. So I've installed those, and we're going to paste that code into our portfolio here. So we're going to use, and for now we're just going to drop it all right here just to have something that's there. And I know for sure I have this AOS, so I'm going to go ahead and start importing some things at the very top that I know that I'm going to need. So that's there for sure. And I also have this isotope here, so we're going to go ahead and import that. Okay, so those are the two packages. Now we need this imported, use effect. So the JavaScript library has a function called select, and if we go up here to the very top, you'll see that select function, and essentially there is it's using the document query selector or query selector all if it's doing many of them. So we're just going to go and switch these two from selects to document query selector. That's that one. And then for portfolio filters, this one is going to be a query select all. And I don't need this true because that was just telling it to select everything. And I'm just going to get my selectors kind of all in the same spot here. All right, the next thing we're going to convert is this on. This main had an on to allow kind of easy assignments here. So we're going to convert that to an on. Now we have multiple elements, so we're going to have to do a for each. We're going to have to do this kind of thing. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so let's start converting this. And I'm just going to copy and paste where I want to land here. That whole line is going to convert to this. Let's go and pull this up so it's kind of lined up here. So this on, again, there's multiple of these. So it's going to be for each one of those, which is here. We've already got this kind of selector. So for each one of those, which is right here. And then if you look at the on click, it was adding an event listener. So it's doing this for each. So we're going to get this format, which is right here. So add event listener, and then there's a click event. So that's the click event right there. So I think if I can just remove this line now, this was a true. This option was part of that on event. We don't need that anymore, but looks like we need an extra paren just to kind of close out of those things. So let's see. So I save this. Let's start up our server again, and we're gonna just make sure we got everything. We'll reload, and let's see if this filter is working. So now this filter is again working. So we've taken that code that we had in main, which was all of this code here at the very bottom. We've copied and pasted it over to the portfolio component, which is where it belongs. And then we just kind of made the code work. So we subbed in some of the query selectors, and we converted one line of code here, and then everything just kind of functioned for us. So I think that's a good spot for that. And now I can remove all of this code again. This skills, again, this was a progress bar animation that was never used. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And we're on to this typed. So we know this is in the hero. I am going to go ahead and just get rid of that for now. So when we comment this out and we reload, it does look like the type D is still working. But if you remember right, the longer this sits, it starts to get a little funky with how quickly it's doing updates. And I think it's because the way we implemented this hero, we had still imported a JavaScript library, and we're not really using a kind of a React component. So there's a React component, and it's called React-typed. So we'll install that, and we'll go look at the package.json file. Might be able to clean up that a little bit. So here's package.json. So here's React type D, and we should be able to start to use that now in our hero. So at the very top, so I'm going to get rid of this. We don't need this. And at the very top, I'm going to import that new React type D. And at the very bottom, I'm going to switch this out because we're going to start to use that React component. And what I'm going to switch it out to, I'm just going to copy and paste this code. I'll leave both in there for now. You can compare them. But here's that paragraph. I got rid of the IM because some of the verbs that we have they start with like a letter that probably you should use the word "and." So I just got rid of that. I added some spaces. And now here's our component. And our component's using these words. And so let's go ahead and start up our server again. I get this piece is broken here because I stopped that other import. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that back in so you can see both of them. So there's the original. I paste it, and now you can see they're both here. Obviously, I don't want both of them, so I'm going to get rid of the top one now that you can see them both working. So that's this line right here. I'm going to get rid of this. Because I no longer have this component, I don't need that anymore, and I can get rid of that import at the very top. So when we're all said and done, we're at this level. Final cleanups here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. I don't need that anymore, and I don't need that. And so here is our final component for our hero, and now this is functioning like we want it. So now that I know I got this working, I'm going to go ahead and delete this code. Let's go and look at our imports over here. I don't have type D. I don't have it up here either, so I'm good here. So now we're starting to get into kind of the nav and the scroll to. So as I start to scroll, making sure that these things stay highlighted. All right, so let's go ahead and first of all, let's look at this. What's this one doing? So on the load, if there is a hash, we're going to select and then we're going to scroll to it. So let's see if that works. So let's say I'm here. So I just reload the page. It's kind of getting to that already. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. Let's see if we're still functioning with this. So I think that the browser already kind of takes care of this for us. It looks like it to me anyway, so that's already kind of scrolling. So I'm going to leave that there for now in case we have to come back and maybe fix it later. So we look at this next bit of code here. That sidebar has a bunch of these navigational links, and they all have this class called scroll to. And in main.js, when we click the event that has that class, this is what gets executed. And this is essentially doing a scroll to, and there's a function up here called scroll to, which scrolls the window to the kind of hash element that's being selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this code for now, and let's see if we function, because I think the browser automatically does some of this for us. So /portfolio, about, testimonials. So that's working. And then when I uncomment it, is there any big difference between? I'm not seeing a difference. So I'm going to just comment this out and then say that that's functioning already, but I'll leave the code for now in case I have to implement it in a little bit. So this mobile nav toggle, we talked about this earlier. So this is when I shrink my page so it's like too small, the navigation disappears and this gets toggled. It's now shown. And then when it's larger, that little button up there that hides. So this probably should go in with wherever that toggle is, which I think it's in the sidebar. So at the very top, here's where this mobile nav link is. It's hidden by default, so we should probably add an event listener in here. and take this bit of code and put it there. So I'm going to copy this. So if I comment this out, kind of expect that it won't show and hide anymore, but we'll see that it does. And the reason it does is because I already had converted this bit of code. So if we look here in the layout, here's the bit of code. We kind of dropped this in earlier, and I think I did that off camera, and so you didn't get to see that, but that's that bit of code right there. So this, I know for sure we will not need anymore. Let me get that out of there. This is a scroll to function that's only used by the ones that I already commented out, so we're gonna get that out of there. So up next is this bit of code here. This bit of code controls which element is active here as we scroll. So as we scroll, it looks at the scroll position and it figures out which one should be active. This code, I'm going to comment this out, and you would think that it would no longer work, but it is still working. And the reason that is because this code belongs in the sidebar. And that's one of the things that I fixed when I wasn't recording. So that bit of code right here now exists over here in the sidebar. Since I know that's already there, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. We're going to scroll on up. And there's this on scroll against not being used. I'm going to comment that out. I don't think I'm going to need it. And then the last two functions, this is a helper method to set events, no longer needed. And then this select is no longer needed. So I think that that's everything in this main.js file. So everything's commented out in main.js. So if I go to index.html, I should be able to delete that file. I don't need to import it anymore at all. And I should still be functioning over here. Let's quickly test out one of the portfolio pages. That looks like it's working. Okay, so now that we know that that works, we can take our JavaScript file. We don't need this anymore. Everything's commented out, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. In fact, it's the only file in that folder, so I'm going to delete that folder. And then if I look at the vendors directory, a lot of this now has been pulled in through NPM packages, so we don't need AOS anymore. We don't need the lightbox, the isotope layout, this PHP, the pure counter, the swiper, type D, or waypoints. Gonna go ahead and delete all those. And just to be sure, let's go ahead and refresh this over here, make sure everything's functioning. I got one error. What's that error about? Unexpected token. If I look at my index, so I still imported the vendor. I don't need this anymore. I just missed that one, it looks like. And I should get rid of that. That error should go away. Okay, so that's good. So we clean up our vendor directory also. So the last bit of code that I'm going to introduce is when we look at this portfolio page, I kind of wanted to be able to navigate between the different projects. So I did do a little bit of an update here on the portfolio page. So I'm just going to drop most of this content in here. It's already kind of pretty big. So I'm introducing a new array, and I'm kind of sorting by names here. So I have the names. So down here, I'm going to wrap everything. I don't know if I need to do this, but I'm just going to make sure it stays the same as the production one. I'm going to wrap all of this up here. And let it reformat it. Essentially, I just added a wrapper around everything. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of top navigation here. And I broke it a little bit because I did introduce this this function. I forgot to put that in here. So let's go ahead and add that function, and then we'll go over everything. So what I just introduced was this top bar here. And so it has kind of the selected name, but here's a drop down where now I can navigate between the different projects. So it's a pretty easy navigation. I do have some repeated information here and here now. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up this little section right there. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste with the cleaned up version There's not too much difference here, but just removing some of the repeated data. So I cleaned that up a little bit. Still some repeated information here. I probably don't need this bar at all, but I'll come back to that later if I want. So anyways, this is all functioning. I've added that new bar at the top. So at this point, I think we're ready to kind of push it up to GitHub. So there's a couple of things we got to fix before we get to the point where we can deploy this to GitHub. So first thing is we're going to leverage a package here. So we're going to install gh-pages. And when I get all done with this, I'm going to have this new GH pages down here as part of my development environment. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add 2 new options to my scripts area. So one is a pre-deploy and one's a deploy. And then how I would use this then once I'm ready to push up to GitHub. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm not ready, but I would say npm run deploy. And then it's going to build everything and it's going to put it into a branch called gh-pages. And I've already pushed this a couple of times, so I'm just going to show you, again, this is from the final version, which is this code up here where it has the 2 directories. But for now, you can see what this looks like is I got 2 branches. I got the master branch where the code is. And then every time I deploy, it's deploying it to this GH branches. And GH pages, it's all the content built for the React app. So that's what this all is. And then if you look under settings and then pages, you can see I've got my GitHub page set up so that it is going to show this page from that branch. I selected the GH pages branch and the root element of it. So that's how GitHub pages is all set up and to function. But there's one more thing that GitHub pages doesn't support is right now, if I start this up, I have this application and the part that's going to break GitHub pages is down here when I want to go and I click another page, I get this other route. It doesn't like this in GitHub pages. So what I have to do is I'm going to switch to using a different kind of router. And if you recall right now, the router that we're using is defined in the index.js page, and it's called the browser router. And what I want to do is I want to switch this over to the hash router. And for now, let's go ahead and just run this. And I'm going to just refresh it again with the base URL because some things have changed that we want to do. So first thing we're going to notice is we're getting some errors here. And this is because of the code that we have that does the activation of the sidebar. And so we're going to look at it as our sidebar component. The code that's giving us issues right now is this query selector right here. And so if I were to just comment out all of this, obviously that's not where we want to land, but let's go ahead and console out, just so you can get an idea of what's going on under the hood, is we're going to console out that hash and see what we get. So now everything's functioning, but if I look over here in the console, I can see, let's refresh this. I can see that it's console outing these the hash now. And there's an extra 2 characters that this router has introduced. Everything's going to be under the hashtag /, but then I have my other hashes after that. So what I want to do here is I want to be able to filter out those first 2 characters. And so I'm going to introduce this new line of code. And we're going to uncomment out all of this. And then instead of going off that hash, we're just going to use this new hash that we've introduced. So we'll land right here. So only thing we've done is we've taken the string that's coming off of this hash element, and if it already starts with #, I'm going to go ahead and remove those first 2 characters so I can get back to a normal /, because that's kind of what this code wants to do. And now if I refresh this, and again, this is the event listener for when I'm scrolling, and so it will activate the correct sidebar. That's all functioning here again. The next thing is I want to just go and make sure my portfolio pages are still working and just check those out. And again, I have my new top. This is the part where I want to make sure like this is functioning. Okay, so it's automatically working for us here, even with this new router. So all the routing now seems to be working using that hashtag router. And so that was the routing changes that we needed to do to push this up to GitHub. So now we're at a place where what's in this folder, react_proj, is the same thing as what's in this directory here. And so these two directories now should be exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop this one. I'm going to get into the React version over on the other side, and you can see it running again. So this will be exactly the same version, same code now. Everything should behave exactly the same way. So I have my portfolio. I can go back to kind of the very top. So I get rid of all of this, go back to the very top, and as I scroll, everything functions, and I can go to the portfolio page, that works. I can open up a link, that all works. I get my top. So we're back to functioning the way we were before. So now this React version is at a point where we could push this up to GitHub. So we've gone through the cleanup, everything looks good. I'm going to look for any changes here, see if there's anything. There shouldn't be anything in this directory because I haven't changed anything in a while. So what I'm going to do is, if there were changes, then I would commit those changes. So now I can deploy this to GitHub. So that is npm run deploy, and it'll go through its gyrations of everything it needs to do in order to create that gh-pages branch, and it'll rebuild everything. And then obviously at some later point, a few minutes later, it will kind of show that it's been updated. So we made this more of a React kind of app, got rid of that JavaScript that was kind of floating around there, and pushed that into our components. We cleaned up some unused files that we no longer needed, like images and vendor files. We added the package to be able to push this up to GitHub, and now we can push it up to GitHub pages. And if you decide you wanted to have a similar profile for yourself, do go buy a license for the original theme that I purchased. I purchased a single license for myself, but if you're going to use it, you need a license yourself also. I will leave a link to that original theme in the comments section. That's it for now, but if you have questions or comments, you know what to do.